Same thing. When my children go to school, when my children graduate from school, when my children have their children, when I have grandchildren. And the whole time you realize that you never actually got what you were looking for. Because you're looking in the wrong place. You're looking in all these banana trees, looking for like a very thick tree. Like in California, we have redwood trees that are sometimes as big as this hall. And they go for like many stories tall, 6, 7 stories tall. You're looking for something like that, something solid, something concrete. But you're looking inside of a banana tree grove. You're never going to find it. That's why we suffer. There's nothing wrong with having children. There's nothing wrong with a house. There's nothing wrong with a degree. There's nothing wrong with money. There's nothing wrong with wanting to have a family and all these things. Those are perfectly nice things. But if you think that that is going to bring me happiness, that's when you find the problem. That's the problem. But once you understand that all things are empty, you don't have this problem. You don't cling to things. And because you don't cling, you don't desire. And because you don't desire, however things turn out, you're always peaceful. You're always tranquil. You're always calm. You're always equanimous. This is easier said than done. I have to admit, even in my many years of practice, it is quite difficult to accept all things. But little by little, I become more accepting. Little by little, I begin to understand more how everything is empty. So when people offend me, they're not offending me. They're offending the idea they have about me in their mind. They have a certain idea about me in their head, and they're attacking that idea about me in their head. But that idea they have about me in their head is not me. It's in their head. It has nothing to do with me. So I don't get offended. It's like they're just having they're actually just like having a fight within themselves. That's what's happening.
Yes.
So this is how we become free from suffering, by understanding this very principle of that the whole world is empty and that we need to let go of everything. And that these things that we think are really us are just causes and conditions. They're just artifacts that we find in the world that then we attribute some sort of identity. We place some sort of idea on it. We become over-invested. I've changed my identity many times in this life. You know, before I was a soldier in the Air Force, and that's who I was. You know, I was a warrior, I was a soldier, I was a brave person, I thought I was a hero, I thought all these things of who I was. And I thought that that's how I was going to live the rest of my life, do my 20 years and retire in the Air Force. Now look at me, I'm a Buddhist monk doing something completely different. Which one is the real me? Is this the real me, or is the Air Force one the real me? None of them. None of them are the real me. Is it the little kid who used to love playing Pokemon on his Game Boy in middle school when he was supposed to be studying? I would sit in the back and play Pokemon in the back. Was that the real me? You know, I failed middle school and high school. I had to do an extra year to graduate high school. And then when I went to university, I graduated with honors. The top. Which one is the real me? The bad student or the good student? Which is the real me? None of them. Because there's no real me to begin with. These are just things that happen. These are just activities. These are just experiences in the world. It's us who cling to these experiences. Something happens bad, I'm a bad person. Something happens good, I'm a good person. But there's just good and bad actions. That's all there is. I am not this body, there's a body, but I'm not the body. They're seeing, but I'm not the seeing. This is what it means. This is the teaching of anatta. Anatta and sunyata are the same thing. There's no difference. We're talking about the same thing. How do we know that there's no self? Oh, we know that there's no self because all things are empty. They're tied in together. How do we know that all things are empty? We know that all things are empty because they depend on causes and conditions. How do we know that things depend on causes and conditions? Here's where the Buddha tells us, well, start looking at life. Start analyzing things. Start seeing how things work in your life. Start looking at your behaviors, your speech. Start looking at your thinking and look at the consequences of your actions. And then you see how everything comes about. If we want to be free from suffering, if we want to reach happiness, then what we need to do is we need to look at our thoughts. We need to look at our feelings. We need to look at our speech. We need to look at our actions. We need to look at our career and our hobbies and the groups that we're part of and see, are these things actually good actions that are leading to good results, or are these things bad actions that are leading to bad results? That's the power of emptiness. Because if we did have a real self, if we did have a real soul, then we would be stuck with whoever we are. So in Buddhism, you're not stuck. No matter how horrible you think you are, you can always change. That's the beauty of non-self. Because there's no real you. You're not a loser. You're not a bad person. You're not an angry person. You're not a sad person. You're not a greedy person. You're not a violent person. None of these things are you. You can always change these patterns. These are just patterns that we can change. We can always change the story around things. It's very simple to see how we can change the story around things. There's some people who like sweet, some people that don't like sweet. Is sweet good or bad? It's just our relationship to sweetness. And that relationship can change just like spiciness. You know, here's something interesting. A lot of times in the US or in other Western countries, Asian people or other people, like Latino people, will make fun of like Europeans or white people because they can't eat spicy food, right? And then we'll say, well, you know, it's because I'm Indonesian. It's in my blood. I can eat spicy food. But it's not true. There is no genetic factor that plays into eating spicy food. It's not inheritable. You don't inherit eating spiciness. You know how you learn to eat spiciness? By just eating spiciness over time.
That's right.
Over time, you become more tolerant. The more you eat, the more tolerant you become. So in the beginning, if you give a little child something spicy when they're like a little baby, they're not going to like it. No children wants to eat something spicy right off the bat. They'll make a face. But they see everyone else eating it. They see other kids eating it and enjoying it. Then they start trying a little more, a little more. Over time, they get good at it. They change their perception about the spiciness. You can change your perception of who you are, or who you think you are. Whether you're high or low, good or bad, ugly or beautiful, you can change it. Just the way we can change our relationship to something very strong like spiciness. That's the beauty of emptiness. If we didn't have emptiness, then you would be stuck the way you are forever. And that would be miserable. It would be miserable because you would see people who are very nice, very great, very successful, and they're like that because of their soul. That's who they really are. I don't have that. I guess that means that I'm bad. My soul is a bad soul. I'm not worthy of it. So why even try? And you get stuck in that way of thinking. So emptiness is a way to free us from thinking that we're evil or bad or less or corrupted. And to understand this principle of cause and effect helps us understand how we can change these patterns that maybe we don't like or are not so useful or not so beneficial. So all the teachings of the Buddha are actually to help us be free. Everyone wants to be free. In the United States, many people want to go there because they call it what? The land of the free. Or people go to Western nations because of what? Oh, there's freedom there. There's freedom in Australia. There's freedom in the UK. There's freedom in Germany. Everyone's looking for freedom. It's something that everyone wants naturally. If you're interested in real freedom, then Buddhism is the way to get to real freedom. Buddha's not here to punish anyone. Buddha's never punished anyone. Buddha's not here to control anyone, to tell anyone how they should be or how they should not be. Buddha doesn't even decide what's good or bad. He didn't make up the rules. He's just explaining to you how the universe works. It's always up to you. It's up to you to become the person that you want to be. And that's only because you're malleable, you're plastic. Maybe you've heard that in the last decade, the recent discoveries about the brain, about neuroplasticity. Before in the past, they would think after you reach a certain age, you can't change. You can't teach a dog new tricks, an old dog new tricks, right? That's the way you are. And that's how we go, usually what we say about old people, right? They're stuck that way. Grandma, don't try to, grandma's just going to be grandma. We can't change her. That's not true, actually. People can change. It's harder when we get older to change. That is very true. Neuroplasticity decreases. But the mind itself, the brain, the physical brain has the ability to change over time. We can always learn. The thing is, we can change to become better. We can actually change to become worse too. You know, it's not neuroplasticity, change is not always good. Change can go both ways, to be better or to be worse. But it's up to us to be able to leverage this. Right now we have this understanding in neuroscience, in psychology. They're saying, no, even if you're 40, 50 years old, You can change. You can learn a new language. I've heard people who just graduated university and they're like 80, 90 years old. You see them on the news once in a while. They'll be like, oh, this person 80, 90 years old, going through all those courses. Man, that's hard. But even they were able to do that. I saw this one lady who learned yoga in her 80s, and now she does like handstands and she does like all these very athletic poses. But she was not flexible her whole life. Just in the last 10 years, at the end of her life, she became an amazing yogi, super flexible. We can all change. That's the beauty of emptiness, of causes and conditions, that we can change. We're not stuck. If you don't like where you're at, you can change, right? If you think you're a bad person and you might go to hell, you can change that. The Buddha never said that anyone's going to hell 100%. They came to the Buddha one time and they said, other religious people say that everyone that kills goes to hell. Is that true or false? The Buddha says, I don't say that. That's not true. Not everyone that kills goes to hell. What I say is that if you kill, it sends you in that direction, going towards hell. You create a pattern that leads you towards hell. But I don't say that everyone that kills goes to hell. Because we have a story of someone who killed many people and they didn't go to hell. Who was it? Angulimala, right? Even this mass murderer was able to become fully awakened, an arahant, right?
Yeah.
Patachara, who faced crazy suffering. She lost her entire family in a very terrible way. Every single person. Not only her husband and her children, but her family, because the place got struck by lightning. And her mom and dad and everyone else that was in the house died. She also became free. So whether we've been the victim or the perpetrator, we can still have freedom, according to Buddhism. And it doesn't matter which side we're on. Because we understand this principle of change, of anicca. Everything's changing, impermanence. We're not stuck the way we are. It's freedom. So non-self, emptiness, all these teachings, even karma, people take karma as destiny. This is my path, I have to go this way. No, it's not true. If karma was our destiny, then Angulimala would have never become an arahant. It's not true. Karma is not destiny. So we have so many examples in the teachings of the Buddha of how we can change. That's the main thing Buddha wants. He wants to show you, you don't have to be this way, please. For your own benefit, out of compassion for yourself, please change. And you can change. And you can change radically in a way that it's unbelievable. You can go from being in Iraq and Afghanistan and partying in Barcelona, Spain, and in Tokyo, drinking, smoking, doing other things I don't want to tell you, to becoming a Buddhist monk. It can happen. It can happen. That's the power. That's the power of it. If I thought, oh, this is who I really am, I can't change, then I would still be in those things, and maybe even worse. I would have kept going down. Like the Buddha said, once you do something, it leads you in that direction. Those things by themselves probably wouldn't end up in hell. Or probably yes, we don't know. But if I keep doing them, I increase my chances of going to a bad place if I keep doing them. Also, if we keep doing good things, we increase our chances of being happy. So my message to you, because we're coming near the end, is just to, whatever you want to change about yourself, Buddhism is there to help you make that change. You want to be happy, you don't want to suffer, you want to live a good life. Even if you want to have a good family and a nice house and a nice car, Buddhism is also there to help you do that. If you look at the Sigalovada Sutta, the Buddha gives instructions on how to live a good life as a layperson and to be wealthy and to have a good family and to have good friends and to enjoy your life. Buddha also wants you to have that if you're not ready to renounce it all. So I think that's one of the key messages we can send to young people. We can change their relationship to Buddhism and make it more like empowering for them to help them achieve the goals they want to in this life. So many kids feel so much stress, so much pressure. They're not happy with their images. They see all these beautiful people on their phone. They think, oh, I'm not like that. They see all these young people that are millionaires and they're only teenagers. They compare themselves. They feel bad about themselves. And I believe that Buddhism can give them the tools, right, to be able to achieve their goals, to be able to have a better relationship to themselves, and to understand that that other person is only that way due to causes and conditions too, right? And that they're not like that all the time. And that person is not somebody special, but they're only in that position because of all the people around them. that help them. And if we also surround ourselves with a good environment and good people, we can also be successful. Actually, most people in the world are successful because of the things around them. Right place, right time. You know, and I'll finish with this. When I was in my master's degree and I was with all these PhDs and in the research, doing research on mindfulness, and then I met the head of the psychology department in my university, I thought all these people were like supermen, like very intelligent people. But then after being with them for a whole year and working with them doing research, I said, these people are just like me. They're just as miserable. They're not that smart, actually, to begin with. But they're just dedicated. These are people who dedicated a lot of time and effort to being good at this one thing. But I don't think they're smarter than me. I don't think they're better than me. I found that out, that they're just like any other person.
Mm-hmm.
But if we do what they did, like all these causes and conditions, we can be just as successful as they are, because they're just like anyone else. So we need to believe that about ourselves, that we can change, that we too, if we're given the opportunity, we can be as happy or we can be as successful as the people around us. So I always like to leave a little, I left less time today, but I need to leave a little time. Maybe we have 10 minutes or something like that for Q&A. Is that fine? Yes?
Yeah.
Anyone? It usually takes one person to ask a question, then someone else will ask a question.
So is that right, Bhante, that the word sunyata, anatta, it's also similar, doesn't mean that it's the same as anicca, which means impermanent, like whatever that rise, it will fall. Whatever that comes, it will go. Is it the same, is it similar, Bhante?
So you know the T-lakana or Tri-lakana, the three characteristics of reality. You know, so just like in our physics, we have like thermodynamics and gravity. We have all these principles of the universe.
Yes.
In Buddhism, we have three.
Yes.
One is the instability of things. Nicca means stable,
Yes.
like this thing, very stable. Anicca means it's not stable. Maybe it's missing some legs. It can fall over at any time. Usually in English, we translate it as impermanence. But literally, it means that we can't depend on it. It's undependable. At any time, it can fall apart. That's anicca. Because at any time things can fall apart, they're unsatisfactory.
Yes.
That's the dukkha.
Yes.
Because things are not under my control, at any time this thing can fall apart, and when it does, it's going to bring me suffering, then why am I identifying with it? Why am I personalizing it? Why am I clinging to it, right? Why am I holding on to it? I should let it go. That is the anatta, right? The no self, the emptiness of it. So anicca and dukkha are the the causes and conditions for us to understand emptiness. If we understand anicca and dukkha, then we can understand anatta. And then if we understand anatta, we understand sunyata. It's kind of the same thing. Sunyata and anatta are pretty much the same thing. But we get there by first seeing that all things are unstable.
Unstable, yeah.
My happiness depends on my family. Actually, my family is unstable at any time. They can get sick and die. A war can happen. So I shouldn't attach to that, right? My job, my career is also unstable. My own health is unstable. Everything's unstable. My vision, I can go blind, I can go deaf, I can go mute. Everything's unstable. So then we let it go. And that's how we're free, because we see that these things won't bring us the happiness. They're unsatisfactory. It doesn't mean that we can't get pleasure. They can bring pleasure, but they can't bring us.
They won't last. They just won't last.
They won't last. And that's what we want, right? That's why in other religions, everyone wants to go to heaven. What is heaven? What is heaven? What do you think they mean by heaven in other religions? Permanent happiness.
Permanent happiness, that's it, yeah.
Eternal paradise. Everyone's looking for that, right? Buddhists are also looking for that too. But we don't look for it in the world. Not even in another world like heaven or some other place. Or in like a God figure like the Buddha or anything like that. Not even the Buddha can bring us that eternal happiness. We only get the eternal happiness from letting everything go. When we let everything completely go and we become non-reliant on these things, we can experience the real happiness.
Ada yang mau tanya lagi? Second question.
Yes.
Just on that neuroplasticity,
Mhm.
so you've got a lot of moving diagnosis of ADHD and how do these people sort of get to that? And your later on you become like, how do you put it to a scene like
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So everyone has a certain level of neuroplasticity, regardless of any physical impediments or any psychological issues. It just might, the type of neuroplasticity that they're trying to achieve might be more challenging, right? So if it's like higher order kind of like cognitive benefits that they want, it's gonna be quite hard, but most people in general can learn. Neuroplasticity just means you can learn, which means you can change through learning. So for a person with like attention deficit disorder, like ADHD, I know many of them that are highly successful and they learn very well and they know many languages. I really don't see any way in which their neuroplasticity is negatively impacted any more than any other regular person would be. I feel like they just have different types of challenges. It's very hard for them just to not do things that they don't find pleasant, right? All of us in life, we have to do things that are not interesting or that we don't like. For those type of people, it's a little bit more difficult. They need a lot of stimulation. Like that's what they rely on to capture their attention. Like someone in my family has ADHD, but when they're playing video games, man, like they're super focused. And then my family member also likes working on like little radio remote control cars, RC cars, super focused on his little car. Like he can build the engine, he changes all the tires, super intelligent. But for other things, like he's not there, It's not there. So I think for these people, they're just different. And I would always encourage for those people to be able to lean into whatever their natural capacities are. So people with ADHD actually have some strengths that normal people don't. And we can encourage them in those strengths. So instead of seeing them just for the parts that are wrong with them, we should encourage them in the parts that are superhuman for them, right? Like, oh, you're really good with these little cars. Like, build more. Like, let's support you in that. Let's encourage you to do those kind of things that you're interested in. Instead of trying to have them like be just like all the rest of us.
Forced to be the rest of
like us.
Yeah.
And the rest of us are miserable. So why are we trying to do that? And the rest of us are boring. So we're trying to fit them into society's mold, but society itself is not good. So I don't really see that as like a beneficial thing. I don't know if I answered your question. Did I? You wanted me to like add some Buddhism to it or something?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to see because you were saying anyone can change.
Mhm.
So I was like, some people, they're at a different stage in terms of their ability to change. I think that first you said it is harder.
Yes.
It can still happen.
Yes, but everything, like one thing that I learned in my studies in grad school for counseling psychology is that even all these mental disorders, anyone can come out of it. Out of nowhere sometimes too. People have like spontaneous regression where like they no longer have it for no reason. They weren't even in therapy, they weren't taking drugs, they just come out of it. We don't know why. So even if you have been diagnosed, that diagnosis is not a death sentence. It's not a life sentence. It can be many years. It can be most of your life. It can be like 99% of your life. But it can also finish at some point. So if you are diagnosed with any kind of challenge or impediment, it's good to know that at least according to the Buddhist point of view and according to mainstream science, that there's always a possibility for change, that you're not stuck that way. But actually, what I would mostly focus on trying to leverage those skills that they already do have. Try to encourage them in the things they're already good at instead of trying to fix the things that probably don't work so much for them.
Sorry, I'd just like to add on to that. I think it's also a matter of also looking at their strength
Yes.
to overcome the weaknesses, because it's so hard for us to change, the negative impact.
Mm-hmm.
But once we pick up anything that is positive or some strength within them, we can always make good use of that strength to try to help them.
Yes.
This is what I see it as.
There's actually good research about the best way to overcome like sad states in the mind or grief, depression, this kind of like low mood states is actually to create good good mood states or happy states. Sometimes we focus too much on getting rid of the bad, but they said actually no, what works better is cultivating good things. By cultivating the good things, automatically you start reducing the bad, right? So instead of focusing on removing the problem, build on the strengths, like strength-based. What are the things that bring you joy? What are the things that give you meaning? And let's help you with that. And as you help them with that, their life becomes more rich, more rich, more rich, more rich. And kind of like the unwholesome states or the sad states start getting pushed out, you know? They start getting pushed out and now their new normal becomes this. So we built on their strengths. We built on positive affect instead of trying to remove the negative affect, which is a bit harder.
Yeah, this applies to for people with autistic behaviors.
Mm.
So I think it works very well for people who have autism.
Mm-hmm.
That's from my experience.
Yeah. One more maybe? Yes, one more? Because we still have time technically. I don't have to eat before 12. We have a little bit after 12. Yes.
Luini has a question. Yeah.
About changing. But if you feel you've done something wrong, can you say a little bit about I hear what you said about focusing on the good, but if you're doing good, but whatever you've done wrong, it still keeps coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something you would do to sort of say, you know, how to forgive yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Can you say a little bit about how you would handle it?
So there's two things that are very important to do as soon as possible. This is like first aid for like guilt, remorse, and shame, and all these things. First step is to admit it to yourself that you did something wrong. The more you try to deny it, the longer it's going to linger there because you know you did it, even though you don't want to admit it. So first, admit it to yourself. Second thing is, if you can, tell someone else, someone that you trust. There's a power in letting that go and sharing it with someone, admitting, right? Kind of like confession. I think that's why many religions have like a confessional aspect to it, because there is some sort of therapeutic aspect. You feel good. You're not hiding anymore because you usually wait. You're thinking, oh, people are going to find out. They're going to find out one day what I did. Before they find out, I'm just going to let them know, you know, like I'll do it on my terms. You take control over the situation. And that's what monks do. As soon as we do something wrong, we break one of the rules, we admit it to ourselves, and then we go to the monks and say, Venerable Sir, I did this offense. Please forgive me. Every single monk that I've met, they're like, oh, thank you for sharing. That's okay. Not too bad. Thank you for letting us know. I've never had a monk be mean to me when I confess. They're always so understanding, so acceptable. But me in my head, I'm like, I'm such a bad monk, I'm horrible, you know, all these things. And the teacher who was like very senior, they look very tough, actually they're very nice. So there's a great power of being able to do that, you know, freeing yourself from that. I think those are the first two important steps that we need to do when it comes to overcoming kind of like something bad that we did. And the other thing that we need to know is that we're imperfect. Like, why are you holding yourself up to such a high standard that is not possible for you? You're just a human being like everyone else. Everyone else makes mistakes. If Sin, right, or Nina or anyone else is here were to make a mistake, I know for a fact you would be very forgiving for them. You say, oh, don't worry about Sin. It's okay. Forget about it. You know, you're such a nice person. Look at all the things that you've done. Do that for yourself. That's the hard thing, right? We don't want to do it for ourselves. We already know how to do it. We just need to turn that in. But we only do that if we lower our expectation. And be like, I'm just like everyone else. I'm just a normal human being. You know, I make mistakes too. I'm imperfect. And give yourself that aspect of forgiveness. Forgiveness comes from understanding the truth. That you're just like everyone else. And we're all just trying to figure these things out. Most of us don't know what we're doing all the time. You know, if you ask children about their parents, the children know their parents, they don't know what they're doing. The children point out to their parents, last time you said this and now you did that. Right? So, in the same way, when we're critical about our parents and we know that they're not perfect, we also have to know that we're not perfect. And because we're not perfect, we should give some grace. We should be kind. We shouldn't allow some space. We should be generous when people do unwholesome deeds, and also for ourselves. So we just basically need to treat ourselves like we treat others. Yes.
Sorry, again, what do you think? What I have done before is that do self-reflection, and then I found out, oh, that's the mistake that I've done. What could I have done to change that so that in the future I don't repeat the mistake.
Mm.
So it's again looking at my strength to overcome the weakness.
Mm. Yes, if we have a pattern that we've noticed, we should analyze it and investigate it and see how we can change that pattern. So in the future, we don't end up falling into the same pattern that causes the bad results. Anyone else?
I think we finished the Dhamma talk for the moment. We'll let Bhante to have his lunch, and then after that is we may still have some time after that.
Yes, if so. If
Yeah.
anybody has any questions at that time, maybe after some time something comes to their mind.
Yeah. Okay. So before Bhante go for lunch, is we're going to bow 3 times. Is to express our gratitude to Bhante for sharing the Dhamma talk and also all the sila, and then also that is guide us to the meditation. So I'm going to start with the okasa, and then the rest of the you is reply with the Vandami Bhante, and then bow 3 times. Okasa
Vandami Bhante.
So, going to do the food offering now.